NFL players across the league usually count the hours until their first real paycheck hits. Most rookies quietly wait their turn, hoping a jersey sale here or there proves people even know their name. But Shedeur Sanders didn't wait. At 10 a.m., his SS2 logo collection went live. By 10:08, it was already gone. Not low stock, not selling fast, completely vanished. And that 8-minute window sent shockwaves through an industry that thought it had rookie hype fully figured out. This wasn't just a few hoodies disappearing because fans were curious. Reports suggest millions in inventory evaporated before most people had even finished their morning coffee. While franchises beg fans to buy season tickets, the energy wasn't pointed at a team logo at all. It was aimed squarely at one name, one brand, one player. And insiders immediately noticed something strange. The numbers didn't behave like normal NFL launches. What happened next caught executives off guard. The conversion rate, the speed at which people actually clicked buy, was reportedly stronger than athletes who've spent years dominating highlight reels. That raised a bigger question nobody was ready to answer yet. How does a rookie, before proving anything on Sundays, move culture faster than the league itself? And once you see who was really buying, the story gets even more uncomfortable for the traditional NFL business model. At exactly 10 a.m., the drop went live, and within moments, something felt off. This wasn't the usual slow burn where fans browse, hesitate, and circle back later. Reports suggest the SS2 collection moved at a speed that didn't match any traditional NFL release pattern. By the time most people refreshed their screens or checked a second item, inventory was already disappearing in real time. At 10:08 a.m., it was over. Not a soft sellout, not staggered, everything gone. What made this moment so jarring wasn't just the speed, but the scale behind it. According to insiders, Nike had planned for weeks of steady demand, the kind you normally see with first-year players easing into the spotlight. Instead, warehouses that were stocked for extended sales windows were wiped clean almost instantly. Internal systems reportedly flagged abnormal activity, not because of bots or errors, but because the pace of purchasing simply didn't make sense for a rookie launch. This wasn't demand climbing, it was demand detonating. And here's where the story sharpens. Industry chatter points out that this wasn't driven by discounts, giveaways, or heavy promotion. The drop didn't rely on a viral stunt or a manufactured countdown. Fans showed up ready, credit cards loaded, pages refreshed. The difference wasn't volume alone, it was conviction. People weren't browsing to check it out, they were buying with purpose, as if missing out wasn't an option. That's when analysts started whispering a dangerous comparison. The sell-through velocity didn't resemble football merchandise at all. It looked more like limited sneaker releases, the kind that crash sites and sell out before casual shoppers even realize what happened. And that realization led to an uncomfortable truth for the league. This wasn't about helmets or hometown loyalty anymore. This was something entirely different. But the biggest surprise wasn't the speed, it was who was driving it. Inside Nike, the numbers started flashing in ways executives weren't prepared for. According to reports, internal dashboards lit up almost instantly as the drop went live, with metrics jumping far beyond projected ranges. This wasn't a case of better than expected. The data was behaving abnormally. Conversion rates were spiking so fast that automated forecasting tools struggled to keep up. Insiders claim the pace at which fans were actually completing purchases rivaled, and in some cases outperformed, athletes who've already built global reputations. What stunned analysts wasn't traffic alone. Big launches always bring eyes. What broke the system was intent. Reports suggest the percentage of visitors who clicked buy was unusually high, cutting straight through the funnel with almost no drop-off. In plain terms, people weren't window shopping. They showed up knowing exactly what they wanted. That's the kind of behavior brands expect from limited sneaker collaborations, not a first-year NFL merch drop tied to team colors. Behind the scenes, this created a domino effect. Logistics systems designed to pace inventory across days suddenly emptied in hours. Warehouses that had been calibrated for gradual distribution were reportedly cleared before adjustment protocols could even kick in. Corporate alerts started stacking up as sellout notices rolled in from regions that weren't supposed to peak until much later. Even before West Coast stores opened their virtual doors, the product was already gone. According to insiders, this forced Nike to confront a hard truth in real time. Their algorithms weren't broken, their assumptions were. The models were built around traditional NFL buyers, loyal fans, team-first identities, predictable regional spikes. But this drop followed none of those rules. The data wasn't just unexpected, it was rewriting what demand looked like for a rookie athlete. And once executives realized why their systems failed, the situation grew even more uncomfortable. As the numbers kept climbing, reports suggest Nike slipped into full emergency mode. This wasn't the usual post-launch review or a casual "we'll look into it later" conversation. According to industry chatter, an urgent executive meeting was pulled together almost immediately as leadership tried to understand how a routine rookie release had turned into a logistical firestorm. The mood, insiders say, wasn't excitement, it was disbelief. Forecasts were wrong, supply timelines were shredded, and the data still didn't slow down. What really raised eyebrows was how high the concern traveled up the chain. Multiple reports claim that Phil Knight himself allegedly got involved, demanding clarity on how demand could spiral so far outside expectations. When a company founder is personally asking questions about supply chain breakdowns, it's no longer just a strong sales day, it's a system-level failure. From the outside, selling out sounds like success. Inside corporate walls, moving too much product too fast is chaos. Executives were reportedly glued to live dashboards, watching inventory vanish in real time with no way to slow the bleed. Sources claim Nike's finance team was equally stunned, with CFO Matthew Friend allegedly tracking numbers that didn't align with any historical NFL comparison. This wasn't about misplaced boxes or late shipments, it was about a surge so violent that pricing models, demand curves, and risk buffers all collapsed at once. And that's the part that kept leadership uneasy. There was no scandal, no controversy driving clicks, no artificial scarcity trick. The system didn't fail because of sabotage, it failed because it had never been designed to handle this kind of cultural reaction. And once executives realized why their systems failed, the situation grew even more uncomfortable. Realization set in, the biggest question wasn't how it happened, it was what kind of audience could cause this much disruption overnight. The deeper analysts dug, the more unsettling the picture became. Reports suggest this drop didn't just exceed expectations, it completely ignored them. The audience flooding in wasn't the traditional NFL buyer Nike had spent decades modeling. Instead of older, team-loyal fans hunting jerseys tied to a city, data pointed toward Gen Z consumers who normally scroll right past football merch without a second thought. This group doesn't show up for heritage alone, they show up for relevance, and somehow this drop hit that nerve perfectly. Even more surprising were the reported demographics behind the surge. Nearly half of the buyers were women, a figure that reportedly shattered Nike's internal assumptions for football-related releases. That single data point forced executives to confront a reality they'd underestimated. This wasn't being purchased as sports equipment or Sunday apparel. It was being adopted as lifestyle gear. Style first, identity second, sport third. And that shift changes everything about how demand behaves. Then came the international spike. Traffic and orders were reportedly pouring in from Europe and parts of Asia at a pace more typical of global sneaker collaborations than NFL merchandise. Industry insiders described the activity as eerily similar to drops associated with artists like Travis Scott, where culture moves faster than geography. Time zones didn't matter, team affiliations didn't matter. What mattered was being part of the moment. That's when the realization finally clicked. This wasn't a football product pretending to be fashionable. It was a cultural item wearing a football label. Buyers weren't investing in wins or standings. They were buying into personality, confidence, and a sense of momentum. And once that line was crossed, every traditional NFL merchandise model stopped working the way it was supposed to. At the center of this entire moment was something deceptively simple: the logo. According to reports, Nike's design team didn't treat the SS mark like standard athlete branding. Insiders claim more than a dozen variations were explored before anything was finalized, with the goal of creating something that honored legacy without being trapped by it. The final design, interlocking S elements paired with subtle crown symbolism, wasn't meant to scream, it was meant to signal quiet confidence, authority without explanation. What made the logo powerful wasn't just how it looked, but how it spread. Within days, it reportedly escaped the confines of official product pages and took on a life of its own. Clips featuring the symbols started popping up on TikTok feeds, slipped naturally into music videos, and showed up across Instagram posts without any obvious marketing push behind them. That kind of organic momentum is rare. You can't force it, you can only watch it happen. The reason it resonated so quickly is because it represented more than a name. The crown wasn't about royalty in a literal sense. To fans, it symbolized ambition, self-belief, and the idea of owning your moment before anyone gives you permission. People weren't buying cotton and ink, they were buying into a mindset, the belief that you don't have to wait your turn to matter. And once a logo crosses that line, it stops behaving like merchandise. It becomes a badge, something people wear to express how they see themselves, not who they cheer for.
When Nike realized this wasn't just a hot design, it was a symbol carrying weight far beyond football. Once the sales figures started circulating, the shock didn't stop at Nike's headquarters. Reports suggest rival brands went into immediate damage control mode, quietly calling emergency meetings to assess what had just happened. For companies that pride themselves on trend forecasting, this moment landed like a cold splash of reality. A rookie hadn't just sold product, he had rewritten the timeline brands use to identify influence. Insiders claim executives at Adidas were among the first to react, pulling together strategy sessions in less than a day after internal comparisons hit their desks. The takeaway was uncomfortable. Waiting years for an athlete to prove himself on the field before investing heavily no longer made sense. By the time traditional benchmarks were met, the cultural moment could already be gone. Other competitors reportedly moved just as fast. Teams at Under Armour and Puma were said to be ramping up scouting efforts focused less on 40-yard times and more on social presence, style, and resonance. The old model prioritized performance first, brand later. This situation flipped it completely. Influence now had to be identified early, sometimes before a player ever took a professional snap. The most unsettling part for these companies wasn't losing one athlete, it was realizing the entire playbook had gone stale. If one rookie could trigger this level of cultural disruption overnight, the race was no longer about signing stars, it was about spotting symbols in real time. And that realization sent shockwaves through every rival boardroom, trying to figure out who they'd missed next. As the dust settled, a new layer of tension reportedly began forming behind the scenes. According to industry speculation, the original agreement surrounding Shedeur Sanders wasn't structured for this level of immediate impact. Rookie deals are usually designed around gradual growth, measured milestones, long-term projections, and controlled upside. But reports suggest this moment blew straight through those assumptions in a matter of hours. Sources close to the situation claim internal conversations may have started far earlier than anyone expected. Bonus triggers that were meant to activate over time were reportedly hit almost instantly, forcing financial teams to revisit numbers they never anticipated revisiting this soon. It's been said that discussions around adjustment and flexibility began before Week 1 even wrapped up, not because of demands, but because the scale simply didn't fit the original framework. What makes this moment so significant is the leverage shift it represents. Traditionally, rookies wait years before having any real power at the table, but rumors suggest this drop changed the balance overnight. When a player drives revenue at a level comparable to established superstars, the conversation changes. The value isn't theoretical anymore. It's measurable, immediate, and impossible to ignore. Of course, it's important to be clear, none of this has been publicly confirmed, but the buzz itself signals something deeper. Brands and athletes may be entering an era where cultural impact accelerates negotiations far faster than on-field resumes ever could. And if these
reports are even partially accurate, this moment could quietly reshape how rookie deals are structured long before fans ever hear about it. Moments like this always raise the same question. How long can it last? Hype fades fast when it's built on nothing but noise. But reports from inside team facilities suggest this momentum isn't floating on empty air. Early camp evaluations point to sharp decision-making, high completion rates, and a level of command that matches the confidence being sold off the field. That alignment matters more than most people realize. Fans are remarkably good at detecting when something feels forced. Manufactured buzz has a shelf life, and social media exposes it almost instantly. In this case, the response feels different because it's backed by substance. The energy around the brand doesn't contradict what's happening between the lines, it reinforces it. That's why belief turns into loyalty instead of skepticism. There's also a psychological component at play. Buyers aren't just reacting to a logo or a momentary trend, they're responding to authenticity. The tone, the messaging, and the performance all tell the same story. When an athlete's public presence aligns with their preparation and execution, trust builds naturally, and trust is the one currency that doesn't crash when excitement settles. That's what separates a flash from a foundation. Without real performance, jersey sales dry up and timelines move on. But with consistency, momentum compounds. If this level of play continues on Sundays, the brand doesn't stall, it stabilizes. And once sustainability is proven, moments like this stop being surprises and start looking like turning points. What just happened isn't a fluke, it's a warning shot. The old system was built on patience, hierarchy, and permission. Prove yourself on the field first, earn attention later. But this moment shattered that order. Shedeur Sanders didn't wait for highlight reels or playoff runs to establish value. He flipped the script and showed that culture now moves faster than institutions can react. For brands, this changes everything. Marketing departments can no longer rely on legacy formulas or delayed validation. Influence is happening in real time, and by the time traditional metrics catch up, the moment may already be gone. Nike's supply chain strain wasn't a failure of ambition, it was proof that the industry underestimated how quickly belief can convert into action. For athletes, the message is even louder. You don't need permission to matter. Build your identity early, own your voice, cultivate the audience before anyone tells you it's your turn. Corporations aren't leading culture anymore, they're chasing it. And they're willing to absorb losses, scramble logistics, and rewrite contracts if the upside is big enough. The real question now isn't whether this was historic, it's what happens next. If performance on the field matches the momentum off it, this won't be remembered as a lucky rookie moment. It'll be remembered as the point where sports marketing officially crossed into a new era, one where brand power no longer waits for approval and the playbook everyone relied on stopped working overnight.